Detroit Become Human is better than Spider-Man. My friend Beast Kid made a video on how Spider-Man was better than Detroit, so check it out later whenever you got the time, and he sucked. Unlike Spider-Man, just a normal, I'm a superhero game flying around the city, Detroit is a game about survival, trying to make a revolution against the humans as you're an android becoming deviant, trying to get your own rights. But then there's also the memes. You definitely cannot forget about the memes. Detroit is a different kind of game, even though there's a lot of games in this kind of category of choosing your own decisions, completely different from Spider-Man, where you have to go on certain missions. This one, even though you do have to go through certain chapters, you make your own decisions in these chapters, changing the game a lot depending on what you do. With one character, you can change the entire outcome of another. Just like Marcus can affect Kara, and Connor can affect Marcus, and all of them can affect each other in at least one way. The three main protagonists, or antagonists depending on what you do, of Detroit include Connor, who likes dogs, Marcus, who controls the android revolution, leading Jericho or getting kicked out of it because he sucks, and Kara, who is a mother figure to Alice. And these three main androids try their hardest to make a difference out of android kind, trying to get their freedom or trying to stop it depending on what you do with Connor. The story begins with Connor, an android sent by Cyberlife trying to stop a hostage situation with an android, Deviant, holding a girl hostage at a rooftop. But depending on what you do in this situation, makes different outcomes. You can kill the Deviant, you can save the girl, or even get yourself killed here in the very beginning of the game. This can actually cause quite a couple of differences later on. Then there's Marcus, who helps care for a man named Carl, who's in his late, maybe 80s or so, I don't know, I didn't pay attention, that is an artist of sorts. But after his son Leo attacks him, mainly Marcus, he can either push Leo or not push Leo. This makes different outcomes. Depending on what you do, Leo can get unconscious or Carl could have a heart attack. And then he gets thrown out into the dumpster, where later he repairs himself and finds Jericho, leading Jericho and later making the revolution. And last but not least, there's Kara. She's seen in the 2013 or whatever year tech demo of PS3's new engine, where they show off how, she becomes deviant in the very beginning when she's made. But later on, she keeps getting tossed around by different people before finally ending up with Todd, where she gets destroyed a couple of times before finally coming to her senses when she meets Alice, finally breaking free depending on what you do. But you can die as early on as her second chapter by being destroyed by Todd once again. This is a loving story about her wanting to become a mother for Alice, who she believes is a human. And they try to make their way to Canada with Luther, meeting people, horrible people like Zlocto along the way, or good people like Rose along the way. Finally, she might make it to the other side, she might not, but this all depends on what you do and decide their future. Detroit Become Human is a game about choices, and depending on the choices you make, completely changes what happens in the game, no matter what choice it is. A simple choice in the beginning can cause something horrible in the future. Well, not really, but it is entirely different from Spider-Man, which we'll get into later. But one of the main things is, stopping deviance while as Connor. You have choices to either stop them by killing them or getting them arrested, or you can spare their lives. Same thing with Marcus, except with the revolution. You can make it violent, or you can be a pacifist. Pacifist is always the best way in this game, though, and always being violent, well, it's not going to end well. The glitches in this game aren't too bad. Well, they can only really be done manually usually, except unless the game freaks out and just randomly appears to happen. It's completely different from Spider-Man. Well, this game's been patched up a lot before its release, and you'll rarely ever see any kind of glitch in gameplay when you're playing it yourself.
So you see, guys, Spider-Man on the PS4 really makes you feel like you're Spider-Man. And also, one of the best parts of the game, in my opinion, had to be the part where it made you feel like you're Spider-Man. Oh, wait, and then there was a super sad part where Aunt May dies. And then you have to fight the final boss, which makes you feel like you're Spider-Man. Also, then there's this part at the end of the game where, spoiler alert, it makes you feel like you're Spider-Man. And I rate this game, it makes you feel like you're Spider-Man out of, it makes you feel like you're Spider-Man. Yeah! The layout of Spider-Man!
Now, all jokes aside, the layout of this Spider-Man game is actually pretty good compared to a lot of other, superhero games. For one, it isn't Lego, for once. And two, well, it's open world, and you can really just go a lot of places and explore the entire city. Compared to Detroit, where you're locked off to certain areas during certain chapters, which you have to follow a storyline of. But Detroit's still better, so yeah. Also, did I mention that it makes you feel like Spider-Man and that this is a superhero game where you go around the city, you go super high, and then you slay them down onto the ground and die? It's fun,
The story of Spider-Man, whoa!
So the story of Spider-Man is he gets bit by a spider and then he fades to dust after Thanos snaps his fingers. And that's the end. Just kidding. Well, the story of this game is more about Spider-Man, being a hero and swinging around the city. Whoa! But he's trying to stop certain people, like, Fisk is his name, I think. And he works for Otto Octavius. And I thought that guy was a villain or something at a point. I don't remember. But he's just some guy, and he's trying to save the city, and that's that. It's basically the story of the game, is that you're trying to help people, and depending on what you do, you help people. Whoa, you thought you were going to start a terrorist attack in New York? Don't worry, people already did do okay. Well, anyways, it's just a story about being a hero, and there's barely any replayability later on in the game, so yay!
Choices with massive quotation marks.
The choices in Spider-Man are actually pretty limited. Since you're a hero, well, you're going to do heroic things, like save people maybe from a burning fire and fail a quick-time event, killing you both instantly as a building explodes. Wait, that was a different Spider-Man game? Oops. Anyways, basically, it just goes through the game and you have certain objectives to go through. That's kind of the same as Detroit Become Human, but you were able to build your own story there and end it early on if you wanted to. You didn't even have to fully go through the game. They could all three die before you make it to the end of it. But something important that I feel like adding here is, well, a certain sad moment that happens in both games involving deaths. In Spider-Man, well, Aunt May is found with a sickness and you have a choice to cure it or save the cure and cure everyone else in New York. Well, you don't get the choice here. You're forced to save everyone else in New York. And just like my friend said, well, if you had the choice, a lot of people would have saved Aunt May. And after that, well, what would happen? All of New York be done and for her, and, well, all the villains would get what they wanted. But then there's Detroit Become Human with Hank and Connor. Connor has the chance to save Hank earlier on in the game, and if you get your relationship down with him, he loses hope entirely for humanity and androids, ending up killing himself. And though you can't stop him now, you could have stopped him before, as signs of suicide had shown up beforehand. And the final thing to add on to this is that the fact that he can survive depending on your choices. Even though I've already kind of said that before, you can get a really good ending involving Hank and Connor if he does survive, involving them having a hug and basically his will of living restored.
T-Pose Squad, roll out!
The amount of glitches in this game is phenomenal, because it looks like the fact that they didn't even decide to bug test the game before they released it. It's almost as if they didn't care for what even happened, because these cutscenes were not pre-rendered. They were used in the game engine, meaning that the game engine itself, in which it does, actually do this kind of stuff in the game, like glitch out and make them do the A-pose. It's almost a fact that Detroit Become Human is better than Spider-Man on the PS4 because, well, there's more free will and choice in Detroit Become Human, whilst in this Spider-Man game, it's more of a straightforward game, even though it's like a giant open world map. Well, you can't really do a lot other than hero things, and even though that Detroit has a restricted map, you're able to choose your own path and do many things, and so much replayability, making you choose different paths and different endings. But in Spider-Man, of course, there's just always going to be one ending. Thank you for sticking with me and listening to my thoughts through the end. So I would like to rate these games Detroit, RA 9 out of 10, and Spider-Man, at least a 7 out of 10. And again, I would like to say, anybody who's still watching up until the end, thank you for listening to my reasons for both of these games. Now, a few things I'd like to say. My friend Beast Kid, again, had made a video on this before me, or at least we actually came up with the idea at the same time, but he finished his before me. So I'll put a little link in the description to his video, so you can go see it and listen to his reasonings on why Spider-Man's better than Detroit. Also, I would like to add on that there might be a face reveal on Halloween, including me in a Connor outfit. It's not really that surprising, but it exists, so yeah. Anyways, I would like to say one more thing. This outro is also by Beast Kid, and he made his own outro at the end of his video. So I'd like to thank him for the little music that he gave me here.